Shaniequa Washington. Good morning, everybody. Can y'all hear me well? Can y'all hear me well?
Yeah.
Here? Okay. Good. That echoes drive me crazy. So good morning. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to Creative Mornings. Thank you to Chris. Chris has been talking to me about Creative Mornings for months, and finally made the connection to come. And when I got here, I was like, I didn't know I needed this more than I knew that I needed this. Just to see a host of different people from different backgrounds coming together for the common good of filling their cups. And that brought me joy. So thank you to Creative Mornings for having me. For those that don't know me, my name is Shaniequa Washington. I'm a native of New York, transplanted down here in Charleston, South Carolina. I married a Charlestonian, so go Chucktown. Met him at Claflin College. Never knew that this is where I would be planted. Actually, my work brought me here too, to Charleston, and you'll get to know a little bit of that as well too. But as we start with layers, I want to start off with, when we think of layers, it comes in many different ways and forms. I have layers in my dress. People cut layers in their hair. We cut layers of cakes. There are so many different ways that we infuse with layers every single day. There's layers to life. There's layers to understanding. There's layers to forgiveness. There's layers to healing. Layers come in so many different ways, and I don't think that we understand that we are built in layers. And I want to start at the very beginning of what it looked like for me. But come on, since you okay. Like that. I mean, 1985, I'm 9 years old, little do I know. My dad was a Marine and he served in the evacuation of Lebanon, traveled all over the world. I was a little girl at 9 years old and he said we were boycotting some things. I did not understand. It was in July of 1985 that apartheid ended in South Africa because for 5 days, the Africans chose not to patronize businesses that supported apartheid and supported oppression and suppression. My father would not allow me to wear Reebok sneakers. I was 9 years old. We used to wear Champion sweatshirts, Reebok sneakers with the two straps. That's what I wanted to put on, but he would not allow us to purchase those things because it supported apartheid. So he taught me what it meant to make impact from New York City in Midtown that impacted globally all the way to South Africa. And that was my introduction to understanding how to support, respect humanity, no matter where you are, that whatever square that you're standing on, if you control that one square, the impact will travel around this world. My dad was also a bodyguard for Liza Minnelli. So I had the opportunity to stand on stage with her and to do curtain calls and to play in her dressing room in her fashion. So that was my introduction to fashion, playing with boas and seeing her getting dressed and just watching all the things and seeing how my dad protected her. And that gave me another level of how important it is with connectivity. And there's layers to that and how we can be a support system to things that we don't even understand, in addition to how to share the stage. As a young girl in Germany, I shared a stage with something I had no idea of what I was sharing a stage with, that allowed me to share that stage with people in my everyday life. I shared the stage of kindness, understanding, having an ear to listen and not to respond, and all of those things that are layered within us to help us to become human, but not only human, but kind humans. And just like the onions full of layers, by the time I was 9, I experienced things that allowed me to learn how to bloom. At the very early age, apartheid and sharing a stage with Liza Minnelli, I don't think a lot of people have that story, but it taught me the blooming process in life that allows us to evolve. That's my mom and my grandmother. And I just want to bring a point of fashion back. Y'all see those dresses? Y'all wear y'all see that luggage bag? That was in 1974. So that just means that. But my mom went to FIT in New York, and she laid doctorate degree in fashion in 1974. So here it is, my mom that's sewing clothes. She tailored men's suits. So this is where I learned my tailoring skills from, was from my mother, who was tailoring men's suits back in 1974, when you probably didn't even think that fashion was a thing. Way back, she made suits for people who opened the Cotton Club in New York City. So I was kind of exposed some of that limelight from at an early age, that helped me to recognize that it's okay to be bright. It's okay to shine without embarrassment. It's okay to do those things. Then at 18 years old, inspired by my mother, always playing in fashion, I probably could have got my behind cut a lot of times because my parents worked very hard. My grandmother worked very hard, and I would cut them clothes up all the time, spray paint and sneakers and shoes. I'm pretty sure they want to hang me on many days because they worked so hard, but I was creating all of our costumes for our dance teams and all of those different things at an early age. And I took a chance because I said I wanted to work as a visual merchandiser. I applied to the Gap. They got my first real leadership job working at the Gap, dressing up the windows on 51st Street and 10th and 11th Avenue. And that was inspiration for me, not only to see that I was able to create a vision of what people enjoy every time they walk down the street looking through the window, but it also allowed me to know how powerful vision is. And that is a layer that we often forget of how important it is to honor what we see, to change what we don't want to see. Vision is very important, and I had an instrumental piece in making sure the people in Midtown had good visuals every time they walked up and down 51st Street. And then, this is my family. So those are my daughters, the little one, the youngest one, she's 14 now on the left. Then my older daughter, 22, and I'm 40. I will be 49 years old, y'all, in less than 30 days. So she's my 23-year-old or 28-year-old on the back. Maybe 26 years of marriage with my husband. So I've been blessed also in layers to create a beautiful family. All of girls, that's a layer within itself. But to build a beautiful family and a beautiful union, and the first of my family in my generation who just got divorced. That's a layer within itself, because my parents got divorced. My grandparents got divorced. So the first to break that generational curse of not being divorced is a layer within itself. And then 24 years in corporate in Chicago, that was layers upon layers upon layers upon layers. And here it is as a rising star. I'm there with Doug McMillan, who is still the CEO today, that brought me to the corporate office. And I had personal training where I went to the Walton Institute. I learned how to work in distribution centers. I planted stores. Some of the first photo labs you've ever experienced with Walmart, I installed them. So I was doing things all up and down the Southeast Coast. Got my first promotion at 24 years old into a senior leadership position. And that was a layer within itself, because here comes this young girl, and I was the only female on a team of 15 Caucasian males, managing a budget of $1.72 million a year, managing teams upwards of 600 people. And I had to show up every day and let them know that I was the girl for the job. And some days it was tough. The layers that goes along with that, being overlooked, being misunderstood, being ignored, having to show up in the room and learning how to command presence. learning how to be able to mean what I say and say what I mean with respect and dignity and honor and operating with class, because if you drop the CL, you'll act like a so learning how to do those things with poise and charisma and joy, because I always said that if it costs me my peace, then it's way too expensive. In the process of doing that in 2015, I remember the unction in my spirit. I was vexed. I was watching leaders who mishandled people. I was taught by a great leader who worked directly with Sam Walton to be tough on issues, but soft on people. And I was watching people being trampled over day in and day out. And it vexed me so much to the point that I wrote a book called Leading from Reference. And real quick, Chris, if you can grab a book out of that bag underneath the chair, I want to read to you the back of the book, because when my publisher was going through this book with me, they were like, "Are you sure you want to put this on the back of the book?" And I was like, "I'm 100% positive, because I want you to hear what this says." And I think it's so important, and it aligns to the layers of where we are today. And it aligns to what I said about vision. And it aligns to understanding and honoring and respecting what's on the inside of you, no matter if nobody understands it, respects it, thinks about it, because we can be two things at the very same time. We could be learning what someone is saying and grasping towards it and still trying to figure out where we are. We can be two things at the very same time. And where I was vexed, but still growing. I was vexed, but not voiding what I felt. And what I wrote was, we are living in a world where our nation has lost its moral compass. This is in 2015. I was already seeing greed and hatred and all of these things come on the scene because I was working with multiple groups of people across this nation. So I was seeing things from an internal factor that people probably wouldn't have seen otherwise, picking up their coffee and drinking and, doing the everyday of life things. Sadly, everything goes, and whatever has worked has become the new vehicle for leadership. Only finding corruption and scandal to be the blueprint for success. Leaders are designed to lead from the front, but what has happened to our leaders? Who is on the front line? Sex, scandal, water pollution, and corrupt world systems have flooded and gripped the front line of our nation. Sadly, real leaders have stood and marched to the beat of this drum. It is time to break this down, and the trailblazers must step up and clear the path for a new movement. And I wrote this in 2015 with conviction. As a woman of faith, I was trying to understand the God that I knew that was loving and kind and patient. How were we using this as a weapon towards people way back then? I was seeing it. People who were operating in leadership that said that they were believers, that was mishandling people, tossing people like trash, speaking to people like the gum on the bottom of their shoe. And I reminded myself that I would be strong and passionate as a leader, show up as my 100% full self, but I would never discard people like trash. And I wrote this book from the biblical principles that I understood, that was truth to me, to know that people are needed in this nation, but how we use them is determined by that leader. Scandal is not the blueprint. Moral corruption is not the blueprint. That's not the blueprint that we should be operating in. And I was compelled, and it became an Amazon bestseller. They actually used this book in some chapters when we actually operated in leadership conferences, and I was able to stand and teach and utilize this. But the other day, as I was doing my presentation, God brought it back to my remembrance. You thought you needed it in 2015, but we need this more now than ever before. Another layer that people do not know is me. So a couple of things. I've worked with celebrities in my life. On the left is Grammy Award winner Jacqueline Carr, and I worked with her in a leadership summit. She had a huge conference in Atlanta. I was her MC, and I worked with her leadership team in coaching. Lamont Rucker, because of this book, picked me. He's an actor that worked in soul food and all across Hollywood, working with Tyler Perry. And he selected me to come and work with his leadership team because there's something about the power of humanity and something about when you get money, you forget what humanity gets. And he wanted to make sure that the foundations of his team were driven through humanity and not through money, because money is a tool, not a weapon. The other one was Mid-Morning Live and Hilton Head. They had me to come on the show to promote my book at Mid-Morning Live in Hilton. The other thing that people do not know about me is that I modeled. And I modeled also internationally. And this is me modeling with African Fashion Week that they actually bought the first chapter to the Low Country. So I actually modeled for them. And that was back in 2017 that I actually was a model. And that's a layer, because here it is, the fashion, Liza Minnelli, Mama FIT, playing in boas, and then here it is going on a road. Another layer for me was I was invited when I took my first trip in Africa to speak to the consulates in Africa. They had an organization, it was of 300 men, and I was able to come in the city of Kumasi and to do a training from this same book, Leading from the Front on Leadership. This is a picture of me where I did 2 nights, they call it an invasion there. I don't know why they call it invasion, but that was their name that we had, right? But I spoke and we were robed in honor. They did a 9-year-old event, and we were given pure kente cloths that they had given myself and my husband as I spoke at that particular event. Like, this is me, because I'm always drawn to fashion, speaking to young girls who were learning how to build their fashion businesses. And this is me talking to them where they had pedal sewing machines, where they were sewing with pedals and different things of that. And I still keep in contact with those young ladies to them. And then something happened in December 2020. I'll never forget, it was December the 6th, 2020 at 6:59 p.m. I was at the Rikers Avenue Walmart sitting in my car, and I said, I can't do this anymore. COVID was at the precipice of breaking the world. People were dying all around me. I was getting phone calls day, night, operating with the emergency operating center of the world, sitting on these calls and listening to all these things that were coming in. And we were trying to come up with a plan, because it was not one. I don't think nobody had a plan. And the plan became the leaders. And it was so much pressure mentally, spiritually, just to watch people collapsing. The infrastructure was the people, but the people were collapsing. And I could not take another death, another sickness. I had one particular manager who reported to me she lost her brother and her father all in the same week to COVID, could not go see them. It was horrible. And at that point, I said, from a moral perspective and a mental perspective, can I do this anymore? And it was that day that I decided that I wanted to use my fashion as a way to build community. And I retired after 24 years of working with Walmart on and down. And that's a layer, because we don't always have a plan, but we always know when God is pressing us to make a change. And sometimes I think the layer of us trying to make the plan holds us back from going directly into what God is ushering us into. From that, who would have ever known that this little girl who did a pop-up shop in Charleston would have been met by Meyer Vogel Gallery? I'm sitting there minding my own business. My best friend was excited for me. It was my first event since I left corporate. She came down to sit with me. I went to go to the bathroom. I come back and she's like, where were you? I was blowing up your phone. And I'm like, the phone's right there on the table. And she's like, this lady's looking for you. She left and she came back and she left and she came back. And I was like, okay, well, what's the number? Like, okay, like what's going on? So I had no idea. And Marissa and Katie from Meyer Vogel Gallery asked me to come to Daniel Island to have a meeting with them. And I did, and I didn't know what to expect. I was like, what do they want to meet with me for? Like, I'm trying to just sell my little stuff when they, I went there and they asked me to share about my business. They had been to my website just from them being at the table and all of the things. And it was the things that I had listed on my website that draw me to them. So we had a meeting and they said, we want you to partner with us at doing a culture cake. And I'm not gonna lie with y'all, I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what it was gonna turn out to be. I didn't have any idea, but I just knew that I wanted to bring people together from all walks of life to be able to celebrate art. And we did that. And that first day, my mind was blown because literally, and Andrea right here, DJ for me. She was like, DJ, I mean, she was the vibe facilitator at the night. And I have no words to even describe what that night was like. It was mind-blowing. People's lives were changed from that night, and support was made that led to me doing this live portrait in the middle that my picture is sitting in someone's house on Daniel Island right now, where we were able to raise $5,000 for the Unity Fund to end systemic racism. And I didn't know that it would lead to more. We did a second culture cake and it was for the children. Children were killing themselves in drones from mental health from COVID and not having an outlet to connect into. So the second year we did it, and it was for the kids to be able to tap into their artistic beings. And we had a live artist there, and from that we were able to raise money for mental health and to be able to do that. And that's what community work is all about. And I finally felt like I broke a layer to be colorful, to be bright, to be joy, to be sound, to be vision, and not to be an echo. How many times do we hear echoes of things? We're gonna, and we never do. And I finally felt that it was no longer an echo in my life, that I was actually doing things that was creating sound, and sound travels, and it travels fast. And when it hits you, you know when it's meant for you, and you respond to it in a way that it was like this word was directly for me. Then from that, I get a phone call from the Gives. And they're like, we want to feature you as an artist. And I'm like, to do what? And they asked me to make a ton of garments and to put it inside of the Gibbs Museum. And then the Charleston Museum found out, and then they were like, well, we need you over here too. And I started making pieces for the Gibbs and the Charleston Museum. That for you with a big smile on my face, because who would have ever known that a little girl from the Bronx, New York, would be making historic moves? And to know that it honored not only my mother, my father, and my grandmother, but it honored the decision that my dad made in July of 1985. Then tragedy came, and that's a layer. I went to the doctor, routine checkup, and I went and had a mammogram. And while I'm laying on the table, everybody was talking, and then they stopped talking. And anybody who has ever experienced that would know that when, and I'm trying not to cry, when they stop talking, your heart stops beating. And I'm sitting there thinking, normal checkup, no family with me. And they say, can you come back tomorrow? And I'm like, what do I need to come back tomorrow for? And the fear, because they're talking in circles, but they're not talking to me. So I called a good friend of mine, Juju, who just went through cancer. And I was like, what does this mean? When they start doing this and they start doing that, what does that mean? I need you to talk to me. And she was like, I don't know what that means, Shaniequa, but I need you to be prepared for what it may be, and then I also need you to not work yourself up for what it may not be. And they made me have another mammogram called a mammogram, and they was like, yeah, we need to do a biopsy. So then here I am, I'm doing the biopsy, and then from the biopsy led to surgery. And I remember the day of me having to go into surgery to get a lumpectomy, which I never thought that I would ever face. It scared the living life out of me. And that was a layer for me to say, you never know what challenging from a life perspective where it could be it lives. Live. So from that, my good friend, Andrea was like, we want you to walk for the cancer walk and to model fashion, which I love to do. And this is where I met this beautiful young lady, Angel. And her name is just that, Angel. And we sat and we cried and we hugged and we were like in the middle of she'll tell you, we was like in the middle of the floor crying and hugging because people don't understand the scars of that. The most invading way of someone fondling your breasts and playing with you and just talking, and it's whispers and it's dark and you feel violated and just all of those things at the same time, and you have no control over what's happening with your body and all this it's horrible. And to have someone to really speak in raw nature of what that feels like and to heal together. And then 2023, and this happened by accident, y'all. Mimi was there, my first influence event. It was Mimi and Andrea. Andrea was like, come with me, we're gonna go downtown and we're gonna go to the boot store. I can't remember, what boot store was it, Mimi? I don't even remember. But we're there and they're like, the boots is like $500. And I was like, I'm not buying these boots. That's a layer. And she was like, Mimi's like, no, pick your boots. And I was like, I'm not buying these boots. So we get the boots and they're like, which ones do you want? When they're onto your influence. And I'm like, wait, I'm not buying these boots. And I walk out the store with $500 boots. And I was like, I like this. So that was my introduction to another layer as an influencer. And I love clean beauty. I started going deep with clean beauty because of what I went through with endocrine disruptors and helping people to understand clean beauty and how you can still take care of yourself, do the things that you love. And I started doing beauty influencing. And did not even know that it was going to land in different places. We named the 2023-2024 influencer for Charleston. And that's a different layer to show that even in a layer of pain, brought a layer of joy. And then another layer. Look, Jenny's raising her hand. Through an introduction, I was at a party and Jenny and I started talking and she asked me to come to the office and we had a conversation and I was sitting there, I started crying and it was a whole thing, and I became a fit for trio with the work that I have done and the work that I do. And now I'm part-time as part of the trio team in Mount Pleasant, South Carolina as their diversity, equity, and inclusion partner, as well as their creative partner working with influencing with video and picture and all of the things in the creative lab. And that's a layer because and I have to put this on here because the layer of being seen, when you think about the layer of being seen, you gotta see yourself first. Before anybody else can see you, you have to see yourself. Be heard. What are you hearing from yourself? We want other people to hear us, but if we don't even have a voice for our own heart, how do other people hear us? And then be creative. Do not be afraid. I am a Crayola crayon every time I walk out the house. And I'm not afraid to be that, where I used to before to fit the description of what other people found black, white, gray, the normal color, the monochromatic, colors of just like monotone. No, pop out. Be bright, be bold, be colorful, be creative, be seen, be heard. And then another layer, I was asked to do a project for Ancestry that worked with the Gibbs Museum, where my picture is now at the Bohemian Museum, about to be sold for $5,000, going to somebody's house. I have no idea. I find it quite weird that all these pictures. But my picture was selected, and I remember the night that it featured. I'm sure it was with me, and I was like weirded out, y'all. That's a whole nother layer. There were people digging through the pictures, and my portrait sold out in 15 minutes. And I was sitting here saying, that's weird. But that's a layer of recognizing what people portray for beauty for themselves, what people enjoy, what people are drawn to, what people want to experience. And that can be you. And that's a layer. We exclude ourselves all the time from the equation, but why should that be weird that people would want to experience the beauty of who you are? Why would we want to be excluded from that layer? It is humans that make this world go round. If you took all the money away from it, and this is the layer that I want us to walk away with today, if we took every dollar out of this world, who would still be here? Us. We are the most valuable asset in this earth. But we have to ask ourselves, how are we leveraging that value? At what layer do you show up in the fullest of everything that you are, everything that you can be, so that you can be iron to sharpen iron? Because we do not sharpen ourselves. And that's the layer that I want us to walk around away from. Where am I from? I'm saying promise. That's where I'm from. And all of these things happen, and guess what? I didn't sign up for none of them. The layer was being, and we're taught to do so much, but you can't do amazing. You can't do awesome. You have to be awesome. You have to be amazing. You have to be bright. You have to be willing. Those things are being and not doing, and we have been taught and subscribed to doing a lot of things, but we haven't become anything. And this is a powerful season of me. This year, 2025, in May, I will have my first exhibit in full feature behind the glass, y'all, at the Charleston Museum for Reimagined Fashion. And it is such a powerful thing to be able to do that and to take my children, to be able to show them that I have an exhibit or display that will be on display for a full year, showing the power of fashion and beauty. I also worked with a young lady from Venezuela right in my studio in Public Works Arts, and we did a picture called La Negra. And what it did was it went back to history of the infused culture between the Hispanic culture, African American culture, and English culture, and shared how we literally carried the same waterways, but we don't even understand that. And we introduced this picture for people to approach it with Gullah tradition, where you see the sweet grass, so that people can understand we have more in common than we do separate. And then explore Charleston, to be able to be a part of, this is me in the waterfront park where they have the Manor's House, and we did a video production with Explore Charleston. That is a featured video for people to come in the airport. I don't know how many times people have said, I saw you at the airport. And we have a video that's at the airport welcoming people into Charleston, and that's just played in the Charleston airport. And then lastly, I want you to imagine what it would be like to rip back that onion and decide to glue it. I want today to be your Woman Day. If you've been in the dirt too long, pop out. But don't be afraid of the dirt because plants can't grow without. So remember that even with dirt, it's still a good thing because we need that soil to give us the rich nutrients so that we can bloom in beautiful space. So thank you guys so much for having me.